when you think about children, the incredible change that occurs from the first day, day one, the actual birth day, all the way to reaching adulthood, physical change, mental growth and education, emotions, relationships, and then you think about the world in which we live, culture and politics and media. You know, it's really amazing that anyone gets to the age of 25. You think of the powerful forces working in teenagers alone. Their brains are still developing. Their bodies are changing. They're making that transition from childhood to adulthood, which is never easy. They are accident prone. There's a reason why car insurance is more expensive for teenagers and young adults than for older people. They're accident prone, and they have peers. These are people whose opinions are most important to them. They have peers who encourage them to rebel against their parents and societal norms. When I was in junior high school, I think it was 8th grade, I had a friend named Tim who invited me over to his house to spend the night on a Friday night. We had a basketball game that Saturday, late morning, and so we were to spend the night at his house and then come back for the basketball game on Saturday. And there was more than just me. There was a group of young boys together spending the night at Tim's house. Tim's dad worked for the watershed, and his family kept the facilities there. And in the basement of the watershed property was all a house and then another building. And somehow Tim had access to this building. And in the basement of that building, there was a room that floor to ceiling was toilet paper. Roll after roll after roll of toilet paper. And Tim said, hey, I got a really good idea. There's this abandoned house right down the street. Let's take this toilet paper and let's just go toilet paper that house. I had never done anything like this before. I didn't know what it was really called. I was so naive. I wasn't really following along. You want me to throw toilet paper at this person's house? And he kept telling me, nobody lives there. It's okay. Nobody lives there. So I decided to go along with him. My conscience was bothering me. I didn't want to do it. But I didn't want to stand up to my friend and say no, especially with the other guys there. They were all very eager to toilet paper this house. And so I was weak in the face of peer pressure. The next morning, got up to go to the basketball game, had breakfast, and on our way down this long driveway out of his parents' house, their house, there was this old man standing there looking up at the trees in front of his yard with a cane trying to pull the paper down out of the trees. Now, I don't know if his dad was just a genius or more likely, parents really can read their kids better than their kids know. But this guy knew immediately what had happened. And he looked at Tim and he said, Tim, after the basketball game we get home, you're going to go over there to that guy's house and you're going to get all that toilet paper out of his trees and off his house. And you're going to do that. I don't care how long it takes. That's what you're going to do. And I'm thinking, how did that guy know this? What kind of genius is he to have figured this out? Now, I vowed then and there, I am never doing this ever again. And I will tell you, I have been out with people, I will honestly say, on 2 other occasions, I went out where people were throwing toilet paper. But I told them, I'm not going to do this. I don't find this fun. I really don't like practical jokes. I'm not doing it. So I stood around watching people throw toilet paper. I'm not throwing toilet paper. That was still wrong. Okay, I was still weak. But I said, I'm not doing this ever again. And I will tell you, it's almost always true. When I say I'm not going to that store ever again, or I'm not, my wife will tell you, I make these vows. I'm not going back there. I'm not going to. I didn't enjoy it. I'm not going back. There's a Sam's Club in North Raleigh. They could pay me to take their stuff. I'm not going in there. All right? They tried to kidnap me once. That's a completely different sermon illustration. And I'm totally serious. My wife will back me up here. She was there. So the problem of parenting is pretty big, isn't it? And you who are parents know it's a big problem. It's difficult to be a parent. And you start listening to all of the experts, all of the educators who have the doctorates in education and psychology, and they want to help you, for a fee, parent your children. And generally, their counsel falls under one of 3 big categories. Do you want to hear what they are? You probably already know them. Number 1, what we need in children is more discipline. We need to crack down. We need to stamp down. We need to put our foot down on their necks. They need more discipline. Now, truth be told, there are times when more discipline is needed. Isn't that true? There are a lot of children who are undisciplined. My grandmother, every time I would do something, my grandmother grew up, her parents were Sooners. A Sooner was somebody who rode their horse out into Oklahoma and planted their flag, and that was going to be their farm. Okay, now the Oklahoma football team are called the Sooners. My grandmother's parents were Sooners. My grandmother grew up in rural Oklahoma. Her mom and dad, her dad grew up playing with the Dalton boys in Missouri. You're talking about the gangsters, bank robbers, okay? So that was her family. Every time I did something wrong, she would tell me, well, when I was growing up, and then it was some horrible punishment. I mean, like hanging you up by your thumbs kind of thing. I would be eating my dinner in the kitchen, or I would be picking my teeth up off the floor or something like that. But it's more discipline, right? We need more structure, we need more oversight, we need more discipline. The second thing they'll say is, if they're more spiritual than that, is what we need is more discipleship. We need more discipleship. We need to get new programs at the church that are really going to teach children how to learn these verses, and we're just going to disciple them. And again, there are many times when discipleship's very important. Do we not agree with that? We say discipleship's good. There are children who need to be discipled. And then the third category, and this is the one that the world generally points to, is, well, we just need more parent-child time. We just need more time with dad and child, or mom and child, or together, mom and dad with children. We need more of that. Problem is, women are often at work, and dad's at work, and children are coming home to empty houses, and there's not enough time for the parents to be with the kids. We need more time if we just have more time. And that's talking about the importance of relationships between parents and children. And that's also true. Can we all acknowledge that there are times when really the children are so detached from the parents that is a bad thing, that we do need more time with the children? I will tell you that my own practice as a parent could be summed up in one sentence. I wasn't perfect at doing this. It was my goal. It was a sentence. My wife and I said it all the time to each other. It was this. Ready? Quote, eyeballs on the kids, end quote. I felt like my children are generally not going to get in trouble if I'm watching them. Let me tell you what happens with that, though, and I've learned this, is when they get to be older teenagers, they don't like you watching them all the time. And what's worse, they do everything they can to not have you watch them, and you get tired. Truly, you just get tired of watching them all the time. I don't want to have to go to another game. I don't want to have to go to another party of some sort. I don't want to. And I was thinking about all of these things. These are all ways and means and models of parenting. Some are super strict, some are into discipleship, some are into relationships. Those are all well and good in their way. There's some real value to all of them. But I'm going to tell you that even with all of those, there are things that will influence your children in ways that you can't possibly compete. The world now calls them influencers. This is the term that psychiatrists are using, psychologists, scholars in this field. They call them influencers. And here are the influencers that your children, and grandchildren have. Some of you say, my children are grown, I'm an older person. All right, you have grandkids, all right? And these are the people influencing your grandchildren. Number one, their friends. Their friends are their number one influencer. It's amazing to me when you start realizing, as a parent, and this happened to us on a couple of occasions, I'm sorry, you're friends with that person? You start thinking, well, what is she influencing you to do? Or what is he influencing you to do? The second influencer is not a person, it's an entity, it's a thing. It's called social media. Some of you can't even spell that. You're thinking, that's something on my phone, I think. It's so far detached from your world. Social media, Facebook. No, if you're still on Facebook, you're an old person. All right? Facebook is for old people. It's now, Instagram, and I think Instagram is probably for old people too now. There are new social media platforms being brought into the online. They're being birthed almost into the world ever so many years. And as culture is shifting, these become the influencers, and they have incredible control over children. And your child may not even have a phone or access to a computer and is still being influenced by social media in ways you can't even imagine because their friends do. And remember, their friends are big influencers in their life. And as social media is influencing their friends, they are indirectly influencing your child. And then, internet personalities. I'm going to tell you something that blows my mind. Kanye West has now got a group out in the desert somewhere in western part of the country, and he's trying to promote his new gospel album. He says he's only going to do gospel music from now on. Kanye West is married to a Kardashian. Am I right still? I don't follow this as closely, maybe as I should, to use it as an illustration, but I'm pretty sure he's married to a Kardashian. All right, that's Bruce Jenner's, the family he married into. All right, this is a strange family. They've got a reality TV show that was popular a few years back. He has admitted to being heavily involved in the pornography industry. He is admitted to being heavily involved in a whole bunch of other really bad, horrible sins. But now he is saying, Jesus is king. Come follow me. He's got a shoe brand. And correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it called Yeezus? Isn't that the name of the shoe brand? Well, what do you think that rhymes with? And there are people falling all over this to say how great it is that Kanye West must have turned to God or must be a Christian leader now somehow. And I'm saying, this is the guy influencing a whole bunch of people, particularly Christian young people. And these are the internet personalities that are out there, and they have influence. And you say, well, what am I going to do? I'm the parent. Like you said, I can't keep my eyes on them all the time. I can't beat them down all the time. I can't chain them to the radiator. That's illegal. What am I going to do? What's my solution? And my answer to you is that there has been an answer to this problem, and it's thousands of years old. There's an old answer to a modern problem. And the answer is wisdom. Wisdom. Solomon says in chapter 2, my son, if you will receive my words and hide my commandments with you so that you incline your ear to wisdom. To wisdom. If you will bend your ear, if you will listen. And listening in the Old Testament is the idea of not just listening, but listening in order to obey. What's the order? Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm listening for the instructions. I want to hear it. What is the person saying? I want to hear what he's saying. It's like the referee comes out to midfield and he's about to announce the decision over what all the different TV angles have decided because the play is under review. And everybody is listening to that umpire, that referee, because the entire game hangs on this one call. Incline your ear. If the son will incline his ear to his father, to wisdom, bend your ear to wisdom, so that, verse 3, you cry after knowledge and lift up your voice to understanding. Do you see the parallelism there? If you seek after her as silver, money, valuables, like a hid treasure, then you will come to understand something, the fear of the Lord and the knowledge of God, because the Lord gives wisdom. And out of his mouth comes understanding and knowledge. He lays up sound wisdom. He's the one who keeps the path of judgment, verse 8, and preserves the way of saints. He's the one that gives these kinds of things, that helps you understand the way you should go. And if you will do all of this, then you will understand righteousness and judgment and equity and every good path. In other words, son, if you find wisdom, if you can get wisdom, then everything else is nice, but this is the key. This is the secret. God's wisdom. So that I can say, when wisdom enters into your heart, and it's pleasant to your soul, well, look at all the benefits that come. And so what I want to show you is how wisdom is the key to parenting. And we'll begin with number 1. Wise children are protected from spiritually destructive situations. God's truth is their internal guide. It's their GPS in life. When wisdom enters into your heart, verse 10, and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, Solomon says, when wisdom comes into you, it's now internal. It's not some external guide. It's not, well, my family moved from South Carolina to Arizona, and my dad would give me a book that was all the best Westerns in the United States and say, pick our hotel for the night, So we're driving, what state are we in? And I'm looking, through the guidebook. That's not wisdom. Wisdom's on the inside. If I lost the book, we're sleeping in the truck, we don't have a hotel. Wisdom's on the inside. It leads you and guides you where you should go. It's the guiding force. And so that knowledge is not something you reject. It's not evil to you. It's not, it's pleasant to your soul. You know when a child doesn't want to hear what you have to say, right? You know when people are just listening because they have to. They have that kind of saccharine smile. It's the smile you get from the flight attendant on your airplane who is on her 9th leg and it's late at night and she'd rather be somewhere else and you want a Diet Sprite Zero and they don't have it anymore. Would you like anything else, sir? Can I throw pretzels at you because I'm sick of this? They have that smile, but they don't love being there. They don't want to be there. When this is pleasant to you, when you love it, you want it, then notice the protection it provides. Wisdom becomes like a military sentry guarding over your heart. It will, verse 11, preserve you and keep you. Discretion and understanding, similar to knowledge, provide a guardianship of your life. You are now in a fort where the enemy's on the outside, but you have walls to protect you from the onslaught of those enemies. And those walls are discretion and understanding. They're like sentries. They're guards. They offer protection. We lock our doors at night. I guess if somebody wants to come into our house, and steal something, they're welcome to it. I don't have very many things of value at all, but I suppose somebody could break in the house. But over the summer, we had our children there, and there were a couple of nights I forgot to lock the door at night. And my wife said to me, she said, it's probably not good to leave the door unlocked. It's probably dangerous. And I said, honey, what are they going to do? Do you know my son sits up in his room at night just pleading with God to let somebody break into the house? I'd be just so happy, Lord, if someone would break into our house and I could get all my aggression out on this intruder. I said, sweetheart, we have a Marine in our, I'm a Marine, but the Lord wants Marine, always Marine, but that's really not exactly true. Okay? Because I now have this extra layer of protection I didn't have back then. That's squishier. But I have a bona fide Marine up in his room that's right next to mine, and I'm not worried about it. Break in the house, see what happens. This could be fun to watch. I'm going to get my phone out and film it. He had a roommate or a guy at the school who was getting into some trouble, and Aaron said, look, let's box. He has 2 sets of boxing gloves. He said, we'll box, and if I beat you up, then you'll stop doing this stuff you're doing, and if you beat me up, and then he had something he would do for them. So they agreed to do this, and Aaron, he's slight in build. I mean, he doesn't look like much, but they were videoing this, and I guess at the end of the video, the guy was being pummeled and pleading for Aaron to get off of him. Let me go. And he wasn't hitting him that hard. It's a protection. It sets up a guard. That wisdom actually guards them. And it protects them from 2 very dangerous people. Do you see who they are? Look at verse 12. It delivers you from the way of the evil man. Now flip down to verse 16. It delivers you from the strange woman. Do you see the 2 different people mentioned there? Now let's talk about who the evil man is. The evil man, the man who speaks froward things, who leaves paths of uprightness to walk in the way of darkness. So he's a person who was at one point walking the right way, probably when he was at home and had parents that he listened to, but as an adult decided, I'm not going to go this way, or as an older teenager, I'm not going to follow after my parents. He left the way of uprightness to walk in the way of darkness. And now, when evil happens, he finds it a good thing. He rejoices in evil. He delights in the bad things that go on. His ways are actually crooked. And what he is saying to your son is, why don't you join me? Why don't you come over? Remember, that guy's an influencer. He's influencing your son more than you ever can at this point in your relationship. And he's saying, come over. And you say, but I'm a really good disciplinarian, or I'm a really, really good discipler, or I'm really, really have a good relationship. I'm his best friend. I don't care. That guy means more to him than you do at this point in his life. And he's influencing, say, come on over. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. The only thing that protects your son from that sinful activity is the wisdom in his heart that was given to him by God. And there's a whole bunch of means that we'll talk about at the very end. It's the wisdom of God that protects him. It's the wisdom of God. So this guy is trying to convince the young man to follow him in his ways. And I want you to think about that. You've got wisdom pulling on one side and the pull of a peer on the other side. And you're not involved at all in this equation. And the encouragement is to change directions. He is encouraging your son to stop going the way that you've encouraged him to go, that you've taught him to go, and go in another way. Can I tell you something? When children grow up in a Christian home and they leave the home and go in a way they shouldn't go, when they start doing things they shouldn't do, it is almost always not because mom and dad taught them how to do wrong. It's because they decided to do wrong on their own. And wisdom is the thing that's supposed to pull them in the way back, into the right path. He says, so you have to learn to love, this is what they're encouraging your child to do, to love sinful activities. They want your son or daughter to love sin. They want your son or daughter to go against God's ways. And that's the evil man. And now look at the strange woman. Now that word strange there means immoral. You can go to chapter 7 and see this example played out in a story in chapter 7. The immoral woman flattering the young man, leading him into an immoral situation. It's all given in chapter 7. But this immoral woman, notice she also speaks. Did you notice both the evil man and the strange woman are speaking something? She also speaks, but she doesn't say, hey, come over and do what I'm doing. She says, aren't you so great? She flatters with her words. She puffs up with her words. And it talks about her as someone who has forsaken the guide of her youth, just like this evil man has left the way of his parents. She's forsaken the guide of the youth, and she is no longer part of the covenant community of Israel. She is no longer following after God at all. And then the conclusion of Solomon of this woman is her house is inclining unto death. The driveway to her house, you go down the end of the driveway, and you know what you find there? Hell. Hell's at the end of her driveway. Her house inclines to death, her paths unto the dead, and no that go to her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. So she's encouraging through her words, she's encouraging your son or daughter to be immoral, and she's described as being super, super dangerous. Now, wisdom is that which sets up a guard around your heart, around your child's heart, around your grandchild's heart, to protect that child from the strange man, the evil man, and the strange woman, the immoral woman. But let's flip that around for a second. Not only are wise children protected from foolish and dangerous counsel, but wisdom also does something else. Not only does it provide protection, but it also sets them on a life course that leads to God's blessings. This is number 2. Wisdom sets on a life course that leads to God's good blessing. Their life trajectory is described as being the same as God's people who came before. Verse 20, so that. This is the end of that section on the evil woman and the evil man. Now he's flipping down to positive things. Here's what wisdom does. Wisdom helps you walk in the way of good men to keep the paths of righteousness. So life is described as a walk, and the walk is described in 2 ways. It's the way of good, it's the way of righteousness. It's God's way. This is the way God wants you to go. This is the choice that wise children make, so that you will order your life. That's New Testament terminology. order your life after God. And the way the New Testament describes this walk is walking in the Spirit, or is the worthy walk of Ephesians, or even what John says in 1 John, that if you know Jesus, you will walk as he walked. You will order your life the same way that Jesus ordered his life. In other words, this way, this trajectory is to follow after Jesus. That's wisdom. And that's what wisdom does. It sets a young person's life in that direction. It doesn't mean he can't get off at some point in the future. It doesn't mean she can't hop off at some place down the road. But what it does mean is when wisdom is being instilled in the life and instilled in the heart, that's the direction that child is going. That child is now going the right way. And the result of life choices, when wisdom is in control, well, there's this big contrast with the ungodly, isn't there? You remember what Psalm 1, the blessed man who really is a perfect example of Solomon's wise man. There's this interaction between the Psalms and the Proverbs that goes throughout the books. David said, the blessed man orders his life in the Word of God. He meditates on it day and night. Solomon says the blessed man is someone who goes in the ways of God. You just see these parallels between Psalms and Proverbs, between David and Solomon in most cases. The upright, the wise child's life is a pathway blessed with peace. So they enjoy the fruits of God's covenant with Israel. You see all the blessings here. There's material blessings. They'll dwell in the land. There's military blessings of remaining in the land, not being cut off. There's familial blessings. And there's physical blessing. This is what actually God is doing for Israel. He's saying, if you will follow me, if you will be wise and follow my words, then this is what will happen to you. And Solomon's actually saying it to Rehoboam, who's not going to do it, by the way. Not wholeheartedly. Solomon says to his son, you'll have material and military and familial and physical blessing if you'll just do the words of God. But if you're ungodly, well, the ungodly don't stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. That's how Psalm 1 ends. They are cut off from the earth. They are rooted out of the earth. They're removed. They're taken away. And what I'm telling you, Mom and Dad, Grandma and Grandpa, what I'm telling you is wisdom is the key to parenting. I wish someone had told me this 21 years ago. Wisdom is the key to parenting. Discipline is very important. Discipleship is crucial. Relationships are vital, but wisdom is the key. It just solves all the problems. And it's God's solution for the modern parenting problem. You can't be there for your children all the time. You just can't. And worse, there are all sorts of people who will be there for your child when you're not there. And many of them, their intentions are evil. And what is going to protect them from those ungodly influences? It's the wisdom of God. It's God's wisdom in their heart. Now, if you're not a mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, if you don't have that kind of relationship to somebody else, then you're either in two places. You're either still a child yourself, or you're an adult, and for whatever reason, in God's will, you don't have that relationship. If you're a child, let me tell you, children, you ought to be seeking God's wisdom. You must search for it. And you say, Pastor, how do I do that? And this is the answer. How do you get God's wisdom? You find it in His Word. You look for it in His Word. You hide God's Word in your heart so that you will not sin against Him. You look for His wisdom in His Word. The other way you look for God's wisdom is through prayer. You ask, Lord, give me wisdom. Or like my niece prayed, as I mentioned to you, oh God, give me the wisdom. She's only 3 or 4 or something. Give me the wisdom. Well, she's heard her parents pray that. And you pray that. Oh God, give me the wisdom. Children, God will give you wisdom. You pray that. You seek it through prayer, you seek it through Scripture, and you seek it through your parents. You should be asking them, Mom and Dad, what do you think? Because I know you don't believe this, but your parents are pretty wise. And you should listen to them. Now, if you're a young adult and God has just not put you in a place where you're an adult, but God has not put you in a place where you have a familial child, or you're not grandma, grandpa, mom, or dad, then you can set an example for all the children here. You can set an example. You can be the kind of adult that the other children can see. Well, look, she grew up to be that. I should be like that. Oh, look how he grew up to be. And that's the kind of example you should set. Regardless of your age, you can be an example to those children. That's why there's so much in the Old Testament and New Testament about obtaining this at any cost. There's nothing more valuable than wisdom. It's the key to parenting. And my friends, lives are at stake. So let's seek God's wisdom. Let's pray. Lord,